If you look at videos, websites, and discussion groups online, you'll see a lot of conversation about how the Burn falls short in terms of radical inclusion. Is the Burn organization doing enough to include minority populations and folks with accessibility issues, for instance? Of the 3 times I've been to the Burn since 2014, I've not seen much diversity, and I've wondered if others have noticed this as well. So, for this video, I'm going to focus on inclusion of people of color, kind of as a jumping off point. Inclusion is particularly important to me. Not only have I fought for years in the political realm to increase access to the voting booth, but we've also seen a huge increase in conversations about inclusion in our cultural and political lives overall. It stands to reason that these conversations are happening at Burning Man as well. What I found is that the conversations are evolving, just as they are in the default world. The difference, however, is that I believe that more people in the Burning Man community are listening with open hearts and open minds. As I started my interviews after I got back from the Burn, I was a little taken aback by something that Scott Oplatsky said when I was asking him about the common assertion that Burning Man is simply too white. This is what he had to say.
I'm not sure that it's Burning Man's end-all be-all responsibility to make sure that people of color, whatever color that is, that they participate. Burning Man itself is a thing that you need to want to go to.
I gotta say, that statement really threw me for a loop. It sounded to me as if Scotto was echoing the same kind of sentiment that so many people point to when they talk about how white America excludes minority populations. So I'd shared the statement with Armella Gaines. You'll remember her from the last video. She had some great insights.
I guess there are 2 different thoughts. Some people are just like, we're going to make this wonderful place, and you're welcome to come if you like, and that's it. The door's open. And then other people feel like people need help getting through that door. When I went, I knew that I would be one of very few black people there. I knew it. But I've come from, I'm used to being, in the minority. I'm not super uncomfortable with that. And I'm a little brave too. I am kind of an explorer. Yeah. I am an explorer. So that helped me get through that door. And I love art. So to me, that was the biggest draw. Like, I want to see these big, wonderful things. So then I have to go, I have to learn, I have to meet people, and I have to do this. One of the reasons they should go is because it's one place I don't feel like the little black girl. I just feel like Armella. And I get to be, I'm treated equally. I don't feel like I'm handed anything extra. I don't feel like anything is taken from me or not shared. I really feel like part of the community. I feel like I have lifetime friends and friends close to family practically in this community. And you might not feel that in the default world.
It seemed to me that Armella was agreeing with Scotto in one major point. What I hear them both saying is that you have to want to go. It's only once there that people will see the positives. It is a leap of faith, regardless of where you come from.
It makes no difference what color, race, religion, or monetary value. Once you're there, we're all kind of on an equal footing. And it makes it so that those pieces fall away. But I have seen over the 20 years that there are way more people of color.
But as you might guess, this did not make me feel completely comfortable. After all, there are plenty of events that predominantly white attendees say more people of color should attend. Yet those same people of color still don't feel 100% comfortable there. Looking back at the research videos and articles that I saw in preparation for these interviews, one catch-22 was most predominant when it came to Burning Man.
It's hard to envision yourself going to something if you don't see people like yourself there.
Right.
So in that sense, wouldn't the org have some amount of responsibility to say, you're welcome here?
There have been several projects done over the years to try to incorporate or sponsor people of color in communities. Washington, D.C. Did a big one. They sponsored 5 or 6 people, and they not just brought them to Burning Man, but brought them into their camp, and then talked about the experience with them. Have you seen the documentary done by the folks in DC called the Hue Man Experience?
I'm gonna look it up.
HUEMAN. And they interview several people who went, or several people who say, well, I would never go.
Do you think that the organization has a responsibility to take some extra steps to communicate basically what you just said?
That goes back to those, if you look at the principles, and the principle says radical inclusion, it does not actually say, it speaks to that you can be included if you want. But it doesn't really say that we're going out looking for people. But I also feel like it can be our own thing, to bring people in. And that's one of the things about Burning Man, because it is our thing. So if we feel strongly enough about that, we actually can position ourselves, I feel like still we can, position ourselves within the organization and get to a place where we can effect that change.
Caroline Webb from London, who has a much more international perspective, pointed out something that I had not thought of. That is, the original Burning Man in Nevada, in the Great Mountain West, has a much different demographic makeup than the other regional Burning Man events around the world. That gave me hope that the offspring of this event may do a much better job at diversity and inclusion than their original ancestor.
One last comment that I will make about the radical inclusion. I didn't pick up on it before. I just went to DCOM in New York last weekend. It was much more racially diverse.
Really?
So much more racially diverse than actually being at Burning Man. And it was so nice to see, and it felt so much better and more normal. And I think it's another reason to think about how do you take the principles out into everyday life, because of, there are lots of people who are not going to feel that the plier is something that perhaps reflects them and who they are. But if you can think about bringing the principles into people's lives, then, that's a different proposition.
So, a couple observations to wrap up. First, Burning Man has a tough catch-22. Namely, a lot of people believe that it's not Burning Man's job to convince you to go. But if you don't see people like you there, it's harder for you to want to go. Isn't it a sad statement, if it's true, that the original Burning Man is less diverse than its regional offspring? As such, and my second point, I still can't help thinking that this catch-22 won't be broken unless the org and its participants do more to make people of color feel more comfortable attending. However, that's where I feel like I've kind of reached my limit. As a white man who's not felt the kind of exclusion that people of color have, my role here is really only to present the issue for anybody who's interested, and then, shut up and listen. Going back to the main question, do the 10 principles give us any more power to address these issues than the structures of national dialogue that we have now? Emphatically, yes, simply because the 10 principles come from a sincere desire to include the other, even if it has a ways to go. The 10 principles, through actual, non-digital immediacy, do hold hope for richer human interaction. Alternatively, in the default world, our main means of conducting a national dialogue is social media. That, of course, is hardwired for division and against meaningful dialogue. And while I don't have the time to go into each of the 10 principles with interviews like this, I hope that you'll dig into them for yourself. And there's our segue to the next video. Are the 10 principles already seeping into the default world in ways that you may not have noticed yet?